Waiting.
Hey.
There it is. Okay. All right, boys and girls, this is it. I'm going to let it auto choose between Caleb and I for the first 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll try to remember to keep things going. What?
What?
You go ahead. You're in.
Oh,
There's
I'm
a
in.
free
All
roll
right.
here. There's like
Here
an
we
ad
go.
playing.
Oh, how's it going, everybody? Happy New Year. Here we are, day two. Day two. We already have several people in the chat, a couple of regulars. Good to see you, Krilly. Bart, what's going on, Bart? Own video footage. Regards from Mexico. Nice. Nice. And Marcello. Yeah. Sweet.
Good. Like it.
More people trickling in.
Yep.
Okay.
And we use this time, day two. I'm tired already. I hear you, Bart. I don't know how many kids you have, but that happens as well. So, 2019 and the Pre-flask show, which this week we're honored to have the Golden Child join us in the early. I have to do it. It's not going to stop. And the great thing about the Pre-flask show is it is sort of our, let's make sure that we look and sound okay. We get some feedback from you guys, but it's really a chance for 10 or 15 minutes for you guys to ask some general questions. Of course, you're happy and open and welcome to ask those questions during the actual show itself. And so there you go. So we say, let's get some questions going here. And look at that smile on Caleb.
Look at your smile.
Very
you just had this smirk going on, and I couldn't help myself.
Very relaxed. It's been. How was your yesterday, by the way? While we wait for some. Hey, what's up, Isaac? Pablo. How was it for you yesterday?
It was rough. I never take naps, and yesterday I took a nap because got to ring in the new year.
Yep.
And 2 kids who sometimes decide, you know what, we're not gonna sleep tonight.
Yep.
Throughout all night. So.
Yep.
But otherwise, yeah, I took a nap. It was weird. I started off the year with something I never do. That was weird. But doing better today, and ready to kick this thing. I've got some coffee. I'm gonna finish this off before we cheers our way into the evening.
That sounds good. I'm excited.
How about you? Do you party like some wild person?
What's up, Tony?
I don't know where I was going with that.
I'm not a wild person, but it was Russian water for the evening. I tried to mix it up, which I haven't done in a while. And let's just say that the drive home from my friend's house, I wasn't the one driving, was a little dizzy. I had to kind of keep focus and look at objects. And I made it through. Yesterday was a really enormous amounts of water and lemon. And then I also finished up my gearbox. So I basically edited for 10 hours, but it probably should have only taken me 3.
After New Year's Eve?
Yeah, I woke up. I slept late. 9 o'clock is late for me. So I slept late, and then I started editing around 10:30, and then it wasn't until nighttime that I actually posted the episode, which is kind of like a quick start on the Fujifilm X-T3 to get people up to speed to shoot video on it. So it's kind of a little bit different for me, different kind of episode. There he is, Mr. Barden.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Beard. Yeah. Hello.
Happy New Year.
Let's see that. Wait, let's go.
Working. I haven't left the house for 2 weeks, so yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. I like it. Good case solutions for the small HD focus. Well, not the one that they sell, the neoprene thing. It's a great monitor, but Caleb, you got any suggestions for a little case for the? I use.
I don't usually do a case for the monitors. I usually, if it's built up, I have I like a cargo case for the camera and monitor. But to keep it separate, any little Pelican or a little pouch.
Well, so the porta brace ones, the black porta brace ones, they make them in little rectangular shapes and stuff. You can get one of those. So just check out the porta brace padded black little baggies or whatever you want to call them.
When I have my DP7, I use the donkeys that you showed me.
Yes.
You introduced me to those beautiful donkey wraps. So that would work great. The little one would probably work.
Yep. It would be actually, I have actually wrapped many a monitor in the dom key wraps.
Yeah.
And lots of other companies make the same type of wrap. So you can get them from Tenba and a lot of other companies as well. So they are
These
good.
things might.
That is a video checker.
Oh, there you go.
What do you got? Show me. Guys, I have
That's
to go
a
make a quick
Nanook
adjustment to my
Nano.
autofocus. My autofocus is going to go crazy.
Which someone-
So I'm gonna stay on Ben.
Okay.
Okay. This is a Nanook Nano case, which someone gave me at NAB a couple of years ago, and is about that sort of size, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of got these little padded bits in the bottom of it, so you can just wedge things in without having to put loads of foamy inserts and stuff. So that might fit the bill.
What's up,
I'm not
Kyle?
sure what those things cost though. Oh,
Just
what
saying
is
hi to
going on there?
Kyle.
Oh, there we go.
Whoa.
Hey,
whoa,
yo, there he
working.
is.
Hold on. I got to go fix something.
Okay.
You guys keep talking. I'm on a little screen.
That was
right
the
now.
boo. Where's Jem? Oh, is that what Jem Vision was like yesterday? All right, we got Simon up in here. We got Tony up in here. We got Kyle up in here. Wish I could super chat. That's very kind of you, Kyle. Yeah, we get this show to the big times. Can get some sponsors up in here. Black Magic, #1 sponsor spot, and Canon for their wonderful autofocus.
Yeah.
Anyway,
how long have the
how are
two of us
you?
been bleating on about how good the AF is?
Yeah, right.
Me, I'm good. How are you?
How was yesterday for you?
Yesterday.
How was your New Year's?
New Year's Day. New Year was great. We had like 22 of our neighbours round. But then the night before that, I'd gone for a quick pint with these two English guys who are married to two Czech sisters who live down the road. So we all went to my local pub. And then I ended up chatting to one neighbour who I'd not really spoken to before as I was leaving the pub, and then got locked in the pub until about 3 a.m. So that was the night before New Year's. So New Year's.
You were trained up.
Wait. Locked into.
Yeah.
This isn't with Billy though from Blind Spot. This is something else.
No, I went out with Billy. Oh, that was a heavy night. That was a crazy heavy night. Yeah, we went out in Prague. That was a couple of weeks ago. No, this was just in my little village pub. Do you have the phrase lock-in in the States? Do you know what that means? A lock-in? So when in the UK particularly, it used to be a hard 11 p.m. That was when the pub shut. And it's now a little more flexible, but there's still like a hard, this is when the pub shuts. But if you know the owner, you can get a lock-in. So you stay in and you drink with the owner until the wee small hours.
Ooh, wow.
So that's what happened the other night.
Okay. Interesting. Great question.
Great. You mean the lens question is what you're going to bring up, right?
You want to hit that?
Well, I'll read it. It says, "Hey guys, it's Pablo. I need some advice. Looking for step up from Canon L glass for Cine lenses or better optics. It has to be a good investment in the long run. Options 1, Zeiss Milvis, Cine Mod. Option 2, Nisi Cine. Option 3, Zine Cine." It's a good question.
One for me.
But #1, yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to get out of the lenses, and I think I would put Sigma into that bucket as well at this point in time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of like Sigma Cines in there.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is, every one of those is going to have its own quality in terms of how it renders an image. I know that even though I've had some but not extensive Sigma experience with their Cine primes, the goal for Sigma is always, let's create a neutral look, right? So they want you to start pretty neutral, and then you can take your image where you want it to go from there. Obviously, Zeiss has a slightly cooler look to it, at least in the Milvis lenses and the Otis lenses. And then I know DPs who have used the Zines, and they're very happy with them for their price, but I don't know how good of an investment they are. I mean, one of the things that you have to think about is your investment for you only, or is it something that you're trying to basically bill out on the job with what you're doing? So it's a good question. I don't know if I can completely go down that road and give you an actual definitive answer. The Nisi lenses are the lenses that I think Kinfinity is essentially also selling. There's like two branded versions of the same lenses. Haven't tried those at all yet.
Maybe let us know what your main work is. If it's really corporate-y, crisp, clean.
Yep.
Or if it's something a little more, some character.
Yep. And then we've got Tony. Do you think it's worth upgrading to the new Cines if I already own the previous 1x1 and 1x2 daylight flex lights? That's a really good question. The whole Flex Cine line right now is an entire ecosystem. So it's not just the RGBWs and the new dimmers and stuff. It's kind of all the modifiers that go around that, and those are backwards compatible. I would say that the question would be more, would it be worthwhile upgrading to bicolor mats as opposed to just daylight only? And I would say yes to that. And I would say that RGB, if you really feel like you want to have all of that color tunability. Usually when it goes, RGB at the moment, at least, I would say look to invest in like one, tops two fixtures. But it's the bicolors for me, which are the workhorses. Anything that can go from about 3,000 to 6,000 Kelvin gives a lot of options in production. So hopefully that helps. I would just say, on the low end, and you guys have, I think, both tried these, the little Luxley lights are a great little investment. You've got the Viola, the 5-inch, and then you've got the 10-inch cello. You can do a lot with those when it comes to just playing with color. And then we've got these great tubes. I can't wait to get the rainbow tubes in from Quasar. So hoping those will come in early this year to check them out. I was talking to those guys at the end of 2018.
Everybody who's joining us, I see the numbers slowly going up. Welcome. Settle in. Find something to sip on. Whatever that is. Totally good stuff. And then Isaac, I wanted to address his comment really quick. He asked a couple times, I think, about the Sigma 18 or 35. Should he do that or two of Sigma's contemporary primes? I think it would just come down to focal range. If you love wide angle, I mean, the Sigma is that's pretty solid. So go with that. Otherwise, if you want a little more a higher quality version of a 35, I know both of you guys love or at least Ben has talked a lot about that Sigma 35-1.4. And then they've got, that 56. I haven't tried it, but that tiny little 56-1.4 that just came out, that looks pretty interesting. And the 20 millimeter, that's a tough question, actually. Jeez. You get the 56 and the 20.
And it's the full frame thing as well. That if you're on the 1835, then you're stuck onto a crop sensor. So the primes are going to give you the option to use them on full frame. Yeah,
and he's talking about the GH5, I think, in particular. But that's important to think about going forward. Although that 18 to 35 actually covers, like I've got the 0.64, the really crazy wide speed booster.
Oh yeah, the XL.
Yeah, and with the GH5S, you're getting close to full frame, but it still almost fully covers that lens. That lens almost fully covers that setup. It's just at 12 you start to get a little, or 18 you get a little funky stuff in there.
Hey, Caleb, I get a question. Carl makes a comment. He said, "Wish I could super chat." What is super chat? How does
super chat is when a very kind gentleman or lady like Mr. Kyle wants to drop some coin in some appreciation along with a comment. So if people super chat, it's like a donation, but what's cool is they get this big colorful super, hey, I made a comment, and then their name is really obvious, so they get a little bit of love there for a little while.
Okay. All right.
So, fun.
Good to know. All right. Well, guess what, kids? It is officially that time, 6 p.m. Eastern, or whatever time it is where you are in the world, 3 p.m. Pacific for me. We got Mr. Central Time over here.
5 o'clock. I'm ready.
5 o'clock, and then it's early or late, depending on which way you look at it, for Mr. Ben Barden. And welcome.
It's the 3rd of January here already.
Yes, and so welcome to the first official episode of Camera and Flask for the 2019 calendar year. We do this weekly here on my channel at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. This is episode 11. What's next for filmmaking gear in 2019? Question mark, exclamation point, drink. So you guys are going to go ahead and grab whatever drink you have. It could be water, it could be coffee, it could be an Irish coffee, it could be something stronger, or it could be an aperitif. You could be doing shots of schnapps if you want to. We will not judge you. All are welcome here. And Linus is at 0 time in Sweden. So there you go. Well, 0:01 time in Sweden now. So we first start every episode with the sort of second part of the name, the flask part. And so we're going to jump over to the Midwestern part of the United States, sleep-deprived father of 2, and just introduce yourself.
I am Jem Schofield's greatest fan. My name is Caleb Pike, DSLR Video Shooter, YouTube channel, and yeah, I'm ready to go.
Good. So what's a drink? You're gonna do
The drink.
you have a drink?
All right, here we go. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Christmas present from a
Oh.
sibling.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I changed my
There it
lighting.
is. Oh,
So it's a single malt.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it look familiar to anybody?
It's an Irish whiskey.
yes,
Ben,
I have it in my drinks cabinet. I think I drank that one week on here.
it's
good.
like drinking water, like really good water. It's
Really delicious Irish
really,
water.
really easy to drink. Quite enjoyable. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the
Pour a
old cork
glass.
there.
Just want
Get
to make
set
a
up.
comment here. Tony said, time to grab some Lagavulin and settle in. I unfortunately had it on my list. Nobody bought me anything, even though I do
Oh
Cameron
my
Flask.
goodness.
But there you go. Okay, Ben, what's it going to be this week? A little introduction first. Yep.
Okay, I'm Ben Barden. I'm a photographer and filmmaker and teacher and DP and all sorts of stuff. And I live in the Czech Republic and I work mainly in the UK. And I'm in the Czech Republic at the moment and gone for something a bit different this week. It's normally whiskey or beer or occasionally wine with me, but this is rum, which I'm not normally a fan of. But my neighbor bought me this 15-year-old oak cask aged rum, and it's amazing. It's really good. Really, really good. So this is it's called Presidente, and it's the 15-year-old Marty.
You got some
Good.
really nice neighbors over there.
Jeez, yeah.
My neighbors are the best.
Jeez,
The
those
best.
Czech people.
The best thing about living here, honestly. All of them are wonderful. Yeah. So Pavel, thank you.
And I can see it in your face. You're happy, so that's a good thing. Okay, so Jem Schofield of the C47, you know, production, education, making things, teaching people, feeling good most of the time, enjoying the quality of life here in the Pacific Northwest, but working just as hard. So I'm going to talk about 2 things here. So I didn't get any whiskey for my birthday, or my birthday. I haven't had anything to drink in 2 days. What's going on here? For Christmas. But this is called, these are Norland whiskey glasses. So these are very different than the Glencairn glasses. They are made of glass. They're double walled. And apparently, from a marketing standpoint, you're supposed to have the ideal glass of whiskey through these things. They probably cost a fortune. So Norland whiskey glass. So I'm going to be drinking my whiskey out of that. Caleb's coming back in the moment.
Thanks.
By the way, where is the rum from, Ben? Because I don't have an exciting thing to talk about.
It's from the Dominican Republic.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. So I'm having Kulela. I've had this before on the show. I can't drink, you know, my first drink inside of these fancy whiskey glasses and not have a single malt. So that's what I'm having. And I actually haven't had this in about a month and a half. So I'm just going to have a wee dram of Kulela, and it's kind of a smoky and sweet. It's a very nice kind of, I wouldn't say everyday, but slightly above everyday single malt. So if you like a Lagavulin 16, you'll probably like this. It's not going quite into Lefroy territory. It's kind of got the sweet and those smoky notes. You're definitely going to taste some of that peat, but it's not going to be completely overpowering if you drink Scotch on a regular basis. Good. Okay, so here's the format, everybody. We've got our drinks. We're going to go ahead and do a cheers. So let's just do that, gentlemen, and to everybody out there. And then we get going with the show. So let's go. And cheers to 2019.
Cheers.
Success. Oh, lovely. Okay, good. I'm excited. So, so this episode, we were talking about what's next for filmmaking gear in 2019. I'm the one steering the ship this week. It's been a few weeks. And Caleb and I were talking last week, and we're just kind of talking about a lot of different things. And Caleb said, hey, how about we talk about what's kind of the things that we speculate are coming up. We've heard rumors. We've heard a lot of things going on. We know that this is going to be a big year. We pretty much know it's going to be a big year in the mirrorless kind of small format space for sure. But I think we should talk about cameras. We should talk about lenses. And then I would like to talk a little bit about monitoring solutions as well, because I think there's a lot of room for that to grow and to expand into in the future. So how's that sound, everybody? What do you think? Should we do it?
Sounds solid. Oh, okay. Focus. Poof.
This is like a ghost in the machine over here. I walked over to the camera and I had set where the focus thing was and it had moved. So it's a little freaky, but it's okay.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to just kind of start off here. We go until 4 o'clock. We go until 7 o'clock Eastern. So we go for an hour. And you guys are welcome to ask questions as we go along. Whoever is speaking will be obviously talking to you guys. And then the other two people, Ben and Caleb, or myself and another person, will be checking all the comments and pulling up comments and things like that as we go along. So I'm going to start with cameras. And what I want to do is I want to break this up into 3 different categories, guys. I want to break it up into number 1, smartphone technology, and where we might think that will go in 2019. I want to talk about mirrorless, and then I want to talk about digital cinema cameras and just sort of our thoughts on that. And that's how we're going to break it down. I would think that lenses will kind of weave into that. So we probably won't just put lenses in its own bucket, and then we'll get into monitoring solutions in a little while. How's that sound?
Dope.
Yo.
Sounds good.
Okay, so who should we start with? Raise your hand in class.
Oh, man. We're doing smartphones first, right?
Yeah, let's talk about smartphones.
Well, I guess I'll go first because it'll probably be fairly short since I'm behind on phones. I'm still rocking an iPhone 7. Yeah, 7. And it's crazy. We talked in a previous episode about the future of, way out in the future and how this whole phone thing with the dual lenses and these processors getting more advanced. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens there. I know just today, actually, Red released their first, their hydrogen phone that came out.
Yeah.
They released their first external module, which I'll drop a link to in the chat. And it's like it's not really up my alley. It's a 3D, what is it here? User interface and monitor, 3D mirror something system. But they're obviously, looking into that space going forward. So it could get really interesting. I'm still waiting for them to essentially come out with something that gives us a small lens mount and turns that into an actual camera. But that's exciting.
It is.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Ben?
It was same for me with the Red system is really the only thing in the mobile phone world that has major interest for me at the moment. Not in the form that it's in, but the modules, and I'm very excited to hear. I hadn't heard about that the first one's been released, because surely that is where that is going, that there are the modules that are going on, and that's still something very compact that goes in your pocket. And I don't really see people buying that other than the real kind of Red super fans at the moment. But once that modular system with all its bits and pieces comes out, that could be very interesting indeed. And everything else, I'm a bit like you. I'm not really that tuned into the whole smartphone world. I use Androids and just generally what's a kind of middle of the road. Anything you think it would be nice to have one with decent cameras, but I've still not found one that's that great. Other than the, I did have a go with, I can't remember. It's the Hawaii. I can't remember the name, the model, but it's their top end one, which is Hawaii, like the island. Is it very cold where you are, Jem? You're kind of getting mist when you're breathing.
Yeah. I had my heater going, but it ran out of propane, so I'm just going to go with it.
Just keep your drink close, and you'll be good to go.
I'm okay. Don't worry about it. I'm from Scotland. I can deal with it.
Yeah, of course you can. That's good.
Oh, my gosh, dude. That is legit. Oh, my goodness. This man right here deserves a medal. That's impressive.
All right. So I would say, first of all, I don't think this is the year of, I don't think the processors are where they need to be for us to get portrait mode in video on smartphones yet. So I don't think we're going to see that selective focus where we can basically shoot 24, 30 frames per second and then shoot and simulate an f1.4 to a f whatever we want in terms of our aperture. It will come. I think it's probably going to be a couple of years before we see that feature in our phones. Interesting things are happening though, because I don't know if you saw the post, but Filmic Pro, which is basically an app that you can get for Android and also iOS devices, has just come up with a new update where they have done some crazy algorithms and a whole new processing approach to eking out extra stops of dynamic range in the camera system, both in the shadows and the highlights. So in log on like an iPhone XS, they're looking at about 12 stops of dynamic range out of a phone, which is pretty crazy. So I think it's going to take a couple of years here, but it's going to be pretty exciting in terms of what we see with smartphones. They're obviously going to start to put more lenses in those as well, like the Litro cameras, and that's going to simulate what we're getting out of, to a certain degree, mirrorless and DSLR. As that happens, in terms of tools that we use, I'm sure we'll use more of those. We're obviously seeing these little pocket Osmos and things like that, and that'll continue to get better over time. But I think that we're also going to see what our next category that we're going to talk about is, which is mirrorless, have to really give us some things that we're not getting at all. I mean, Filmic Pro, you can shoot at data rates. I know you can shoot at 100 megabits per second, but I think you can even shoot higher on a phone. So there's going to have to be a lot more that comes into our mirrorless camera systems in order for us to feel compelled to use them in our productions. So I think we should move over into mirrorless, and we'll go from there. What you got, Caleb?
Well, I thought there was two interesting comments here. First from Guillermo, smartphones need more choices in optics. That would be pretty interesting if there's some solutions there. And then Chris jumps in with saying he disagrees. If you want a camera, get a camera. If a smartphone has okay camera on it, that's cool, but not a real draw for me anymore. And what I think is interesting is I agree. We're not going to all like drop our cameras and start shooting on phones. I think the camera just for stills makes a lot of sense. You've got your phone, take some photos. That's great. But I think it's an interesting and important space to keep an eye on, because that's where we're going to end up, right? Like down the road, you're not going to have this huge C200. I mean, you might still have that form factor, but the tech will be down to that, hydrogen phone style modular system. Like, it'd be great to like pull a wallet sized little box out of the center of your C200, and it's still a C200, but you can, stick it on the front of a fridge or just go nuts, right?
Yep.
But I agree, I never got the whole, iPhone 8 versus Red cinema camera comparison, aside from, doing it for the lulz. So yeah, mirrorless.
Yeah.
Mirrorless. Lots of interesting stuff. So if we're talking about 2019, the first thing I think we're going to hear is something from Panasonic. I think actually like on the 6th or 8th, that's where the rumors are landing, where we're going to hear something or something like that for the S1 and S1R. So finally getting some information as to what that's going to be. Is it just going to be a Panasonic version of an A7 III, or is it going to give us, higher data rates, maybe something more like a Nikon Z6 / I don't think we're going to get anything like the GH5 5S when it comes to image quality quite, just because that's a lot going on. But I was talking to someone today, and they made a great point that camera is really big and heavy, like 5D style, as opposed to what I'm filming with or streaming with, which is the A7 III, and that's just tiny. So maybe we will see something kind of beefed up because there's enough, room there. I don't know. And then of course, Sony also is going to be doing the A6700 or A7000 or both, A7S 3, which my guess is going to be like April. And that'll be all very interesting. Sony's waited for the A7S III. They've held back, so maybe they've taken that time. And they said they really wanted to surprise and delight their customers with something unexpected. So interesting.
We might have to drink some sake when they announce that camera.
Yeah.
That might be some cold sake. Ben, how do you feel about this mirrorless space?
Well, the Lumix thing's very interesting, obviously, with the S system and what comes with that, and obviously the lens system with Leica and with Sigma as well, and sort of what comes
Panasonic.
with that.
Yeah, that trio. It's that triangle, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the holy trinity of those guys, and what's going to come out from all of those firms on that mount. So that's kind of interesting to see where that goes. For me, the big thing this year is what Canon do with the R system, and whether they're going to bring out more models in that range, because that's really interesting. I like the idea of that adapter using the EF lenses on it, and being able to have particularly with the ND filter in the adapter. That's really interesting. And I'm looking for things that I can use as a B camera to the C200. So personally, that's the thing that I'm looking at, because it would just tick a lot of boxes. It could be something I could use as my main stills camera and pair up nicely with that thing as well. So for me, that's the big interest in the mirrorless for this year. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
I think that's pretty much all I got. Yeah.
So I think we're forgetting maybe one or two companies.
There's a couple in there we skipped.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be interesting to see what Panasonic does, especially with the Holy Trinity and the fact that they've been in this space, kind of killing it for a long time. So here's their first camera that's going to come in a small form factor that's going to hopefully contain and have all of those ingredients that we get out of the the GH5 series, but putting that into a larger sensor camera. So to me, that's really interesting. And if they take things like the app that they have, that Caleb, is that me or you guys?
Do you hear a dog?
I don't have.
That was my bad. I muted my dog.
I hear dogs outside my barn too. So it's like the dog. Your dogs are making those dogs bark.
Yeah,
but they don't even know it. So so I'm excited about Panasonic. I do think that they're going to be doing some interesting stuff. Like Ben, I would really be interested to see what's going to happen in the EOS R space. I mean, right now it feels like baby steps. They've obviously made the R&D investment into the lens mount, and we kind of see where Canon's going forward with that. It's where do they come into play as far as features and what they're going to give us, because there's only so long that dual pixel CMOS AF can last, because we've gotten to this point now where Sony, from an AF standpoint, is basically there. We've gotten to the point now where Fujifilm with their X-T3 is basically there. So, these companies have figured out the AF system, large sensor conundrum, if you will. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see where they go. And that does, in fact, bring up Fujifilm, because Fujifilm at the moment is really doing APS-C Super 35, and they're doing medium format in terms of their sizes. And that could be really interesting, because their costs have come way down. I mean, they have a new medium format rangefinder style camera that's about $4,000 US. It's not incredible in video, but if they put the video features that they're starting to put into their XH1 and their X-T3 in a future version of that camera, and it's $5,000, you basically have a pocket IMAX camera, or pretty close to it. So it's a pretty exciting thing to think about that as well. We need to now talk about what we want to see inside of these camera systems that are really going to start to differentiate them from, the cameras that already exist, because we've already seen that we're moving towards 10-bit internal recording at 420 and 422. So what are the other holy grail ingredients that we need to have in order for these tools to continue to entice us to use them as one of the tools in our toolkit, Caleb?
I think one area that I'm shocked someone hasn't addressed is ND. You know, as we're approaching mirrorless not just being a photography buzzword, but it's a huge deal in the video industry, especially with all this content creation. You know, even if you're not a vlogger, if you're a team that's creating content for social media, you know, having small camera systems makes a lot of sense. So, you know, we've seen that aperture electronic ND, which, you know, was a great, I mean, it's still kind of the cheapest, best option if you're not going to throw a lot of coin at it. So it'd be cool to see other companies kind of do what Canon is kind of doing with that ND adapter. If that was electronic ND, there's a way to do that and use power off of the camera. That's insane. You know, like if I'm Panasonic or Sony, if I could develop something like that, I feel like that's a huge, you know, way to keep some customers.
Do you think that that's one of the things that maybe they hold off on to protect their higher end lines and their cinema camera lines on the ND?
Could be
about that.
Could be, but Tilta came out with pretty much what Aperture, and you know the rumors are that Aperture sold that tech to Tilta, and Tilta came out with that red electronic ND. So maybe Tilta is going to start, but if it gets to the point where everyone's making third-party ones, maybe they don't need to do that at the same time. Maybe it's worth throwing it in if people are just going to buy that adapter anyway. It's interesting, but essentially that tech in front of sensors, you know, could be that extra feature that you know, gets them some extra customers. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, for me, if we could take the technology, which is also essentially in the FS5 II and the FS7 II, which are obviously larger body style cameras from Sony, and we can get that charged ND system where it's a charged glass and you can basically change the ND intensity. Not only can you pull ND with those cameras, which is fantastic because you can set your aperture, and you can basically just adjust ND to make changes between interior and exterior. But from the standpoint of using smaller cameras, besides the weight issue, meaning that they lack weight, so it's hard sometimes to hold them stable and things like that, I think the biggest pains in the ass that we have in production when it comes to those smaller cameras is exactly what Caleb is talking about. It's the ND system. And it's like, shit, I need to have a variable ND on there all the time, or it's coming off, or do I just put a 4-stop, 1.2 ND on there and just call it a day and then make adjustments to my camera in other ways? And then, of course, audio, which both Sony and Panasonic have addressed really well with their XLR audio adapters. So I don't expect XLR inputs to be on the camera body. I am a little disappointed on a camera like the X-T3, which I really like, that it has a micro HDMI port. So I would really like, we know that HDMI is pretty shitty to begin with. So at least put a full HDMI port on the camera. But the question is, for everybody, when we get into that ND filter system, Caleb, how much bigger does our camera body have to be in a mirrorless in order to house that whole system? Right. Or is it an adapter, kind of like what Canon is doing with the EOS R right now, where they have an ND system that's part of that? And you've used that, right, Caleb? That ND thing, or is it not shipped yet? Yeah. Is it cool?
It was a pre-production that they had, and so it was good for an ND, a fader ND. Yep. But it's not, an ND filter, obviously.
And it's not electronic.
So, right.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it's tricky. I can't imagine it's that difficult to get installed in a camera. Like the Aperture one, right? It's a little tiny box that has like 5 volts or something going to the sensor or to the adapter.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's got to be a color. Like Sony clearly has it figured out, but good.
But the problem is that it's when you want it out completely. Because as far as I'm aware, the Sony, when you take it out, I think it's a minimum of 2 stops. When then you pull it out of the way completely and you've got a clear sensor, but you've then got to pull the thing back in. And the same with the aperture system. You actually have to pull the thing out if you want it out completely. So you then need room to get that out of the way somehow, or you figure out a way where you can get it to a completely transparent filter, completely clear, and then go through your stops of ND. Because at the moment, there is at its minimum, I think it's 2 stops.
Yeah,
so
I think you got to get
something with that.
It has to be that charged ND system, though. I mean, it's got to be a variation of what's in the FS5.2 or the FS7.2. I mean, I think that's what we need if it's going to be implemented into the camera system. The question is, how much bigger does it make the camera system?
Yeah.
And I'd be willing to go slightly bigger to have it in there for sure. I mean, you know, because if every single lens that I put on a mirrorless camera could have between 2 and 10 stops of ND, and that's electronic, and I could dial in how much I wanted of that, then I start to think about, I can have 2 of these cameras working together in certain situations, and it's going to be a lot easier for me to match them. Whereas if I take 2 cameras analog style and put 2 very NDs on them, no 2 operators are going to have those cameras set to the same position on that very ND at the same time, and you're just going to have a post-production nightmare. You know, but if we all just say, you know, guys, we know shit's changing, but let's just lock in at, you know, at 2 stops or 4 stops or whatever it's going to be. By the way, Eric Naso in the house, San Diego boy, giving us a visit. So just wanted to say, hey, Eric, hope
Welcome,
you're healing
Eric.
well. Hope you're healing well and that the lawn is growing down there. So that's all I have to say about that. So there you go. I meant, that sounded weird. I meant the lawn he just planted in his yard.
Yeah, you got to clarify that,
going
dude.
on here? Come on. It's going on to Ben
You
now.
did that to yourself. Anyway, I totally agree. And I wonder if that's maybe Panasonic's last good Micro Four Thirds year. If they can get 8K in there, you know, it's kind of the end of the line for that sensor size for video high resolution. Resolutions.
Let's talk about
resolutions. It's a smaller sensor, so that the ND wouldn't take as much room.
Let's talk about 8K right now.
Let's do it. Resolution.
Resolution. So how important is adding 8K to cameras? Let's get your viewpoints. I know my viewpoint, but let's see what you guys think, and also everybody else chime in. Let's hear what you think about 8K.
Ben.
I don't care. At this point now, it's just to me right now, 8K, it's kind of interesting in there's various advantages of that, but right now I'm still outputting nearly everything in 1080 for clients.
Yep.
So there are obviously advantages in terms of, you know, downscaling, and you're getting a bit of sharpness, and it's also better for reducing noise. But it's a pain in the ass. It's more storage. It's harder to deal with. It's more processing for the computer to deal with. Right now, that is not anything that would sell a camera to me. That would have no bearing on my decisions right now. So that's 8K. You know, it's maybe in a year or two we'll see where things go. But right now, I have no interest in that in terms of purchasing. How about you two?
I'm not going to say that I'm an 8K fanboy, but I want to be an 8K realist here, which is that the vast majority of content that I'm pushing out, actually, I wouldn't say vast majority, but I would say 30 to 40% of the content I'm pushing out to an audience is in 1080. But virtually 100% of the content that I'm capturing is in UHD 4K. So I'm capturing in 4K, and then I'm pushing out. So argument would say that when we have to push out the vast majority of our content in 4K, and we're used to that workflow of having a 4K to 1080, then we're going to want an 8K to 4K workflow, because it's going to give us the exact same amount of freedom in post-production, 4 times the total number of pixels, to punch in, to reframe, and do all of these things that we've been doing. I think that Ben touched upon the thing that really is the problem, which is the size of the files. So if we take from what I'm seeing right now, if we take a codec in a digital cinema camera and we want to shoot UHD 4K at a decent quality, I'm generally finding that somewhere between 200 and 400 megabits per second is where we need to be. Let's just say 200 megabits, okay? Which Sony isn't giving us right now. They're giving us 100 megabits per second in their mirrorless cameras. But if they're giving us 50 for 1080, they should be giving us 200 for UHD 4K to keep the same quality with the same type of compression, right? Now, there's some advances happening here. H.265 is a more efficient version of a codec, so we can go higher resolution and in theory keep the same quality, or there's other variations of that. But for me, if we're saying 200 is the base for 4K, then we're saying that to get the same quality with the same compression, we have to go to 800 megabits per second as our data rate. So that means not only do we have to have faster cards, we have to have faster hard drives, and we're also filling up those drives 4 times faster. So the reality is that we will
processors and graphics cards,
everything, and we will be buying 8K cameras. Whether we use it or not is kind of BS, because once we have it, we'll be shooting with it, and it'll be the same process that we've had for 1080 to 4K. I think it's slow going. I think Ben is right. We've got a couple or a few years for us to really take that on. But we just have to acknowledge the fact that we are getting very used to these 4K for 1080 workflows. And if you want to continue with those, the very minimum that you'll want is 6K for some reframing. But 8K is probably going to be pretty popular. Sam says 8K is like 4K, just different. Caleb, what you got?
Bring it on. Let's go. 8K every day. No, I think just like you guys, like 2 years, and that'll start. Just like the GH4 was like, oh my gosh, 4K. The GH7 is going to be, 8K, and all that stuff will start. Now, I think it's, it's one more option. I mean, can you imagine delivering in 1080 but shooting 8K?
Yeah.
What you could do with that? Like at that point,
beautiful.
yeah, at that point, you could use sharpening and de-sharpening filters to create like a really consistent look, wide all the way, like punched in. So yeah, I shoot 4K and deliver 4K. And I think eventually, there will be a need. But like someone said, I can't remember who, a couple people were mentioning, it makes perfect sense if you deliver in 4K to use 8K. It's just the same exact argument with 1080 versus 4K. I will say, if you've been hanging like, oh, 4K is so expensive, that workflow, like I feel really bad for people who aren't set up for 4K in their workflow or log. Like if you're Rec 709, no log, no 4K, that's gonna hurt really, really bad, educationally, mentally, and financially. To make that leap. And I'm not the guy that like lives on the cutting edge. Like I always have one game console that's 1 year or one generation behind, so you don't have to have the newest, best, whatever. But it's just a tool, and like everything.
Do it. Oh, but I just want to mention we've got quite a few people here. Just so that you know, Caleb is drinking an Irish whiskey. I am drinking a single malt over here, and then Ben is drinking a 15-year-old Dominican rum, which is distilled from sugar, so he is officially the sugar daddy for this episode, just so you know.
Which is great, because I don't normally eat sugar, so it's kind of a bit of knowledge. But can I just make a point on the resolution thing, just before we go off that?
Yes.
And there's a really good comparison between resolutions that a DP called Steve Yedlin did a couple of years ago. Gave a presentation on at Camera Image, which was amazing. So he got us to look at all this content that he'd shot on 35mm film. He'd got stuff that had been shot on 65, and which is which. And the results are very interesting. And look that up on YouTube. I'm sure it's on there.
Yep.
It's well worth a look before we all get too hung up on going for ever higher resolutions. It's a really interesting.
It is. It's fascinating. And it really goes into a conversation for a different day, which is that resolution is but one small ingredient in what makes a cinematic image. And there's so much more, which is why, as you said, Caleb, when we start talking about things like, log, which is obviously eking out dynamic range. We talk about gamut in terms of our color capture. We talk about data rate. We talk about bit depth. We talk about chroma sampling. These are all the ingredients that really have so much to do with what that image is that we have the possibility of capturing. In the end, resolution in very many ways is the least important of all of those, especially if you're shooting for cinematic purposes. And it's the lighting, which along with those other ingredients that I mentioned, which are really the things that are going to create the mood and help tell the story that you're trying to propel forward, whether that's for corporate or, in a more narrative scripted sense. Yes. Well, who's got an Angel's Envy? Bourbon. I love, by the way, I've said this before, their rye whiskey is phenomenal. The bourbon, but the rye, excellente. So Caleb, we've talked about, what were you going to say? I see this thought.
I just, we should talk about raw and compression.
Yes.
Because so far in the history of video, as resolution and everything, as you get all those specs on the sheet going on, your cost is all data.
Yeah.
Whereas these days, we're starting to see some tech and some engineering on the software and algorithms to make that less painful. We've got ProRes RAW, we've got Blackmagic RAW, which is new, and that's something to consider too. Eric also mentioned cost of data is reducing, so hard drives are getting stupid big, and all those prices are coming down.
You've heard about that too, right? There's new SSD technology that's going to bring prices down a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, like even with this Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera that I'm doing a guide on right now, shooting at 4:1 is not much more data consumption than shooting ProRes HQ.
Yep.
So for just if you're talking like hours of footage for a couple hundred more gigs, you're looking at RAW versus just ProRes.
Yep.
So that's kind of interesting. I mean, this year we're not going to see too much change in that regard. We already have the kind of two battle of the standards between Apple and Blackmagic. But looking forward, that's going to be interesting to watch.
I think so too. And we'll have to see if a bigger company like Arri comes out with anything related to another flavor of RAW as well, because obviously everybody looks up to them. Sam asked, what makes the image most cinematic? Bit rate, bit depth, chroma sampling. 1,000,000%. It's the way you light and you frame your image. So all of those other things are insignificant to a certain degree. We've been looking at cinematic images that have been produced with low resolution, high resolution, low bit depth, high bit depth cameras for a long time. A lot of it just has to do with how you are trying to convey the mood of whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. But those other things all help us with that, because we can capture more nuance when we have better quality specs in the camera system. So if you have somebody who is really excellent at lighting, then their image will look better with that camera that has a better optic in front of it with better specs, only because it's capturing more nuance. But the essence of that nuance is already there because of how they compose that shot, the focal length that they chose, the f-stop that they chose, and of course the lighting and then production design, which is like always the thing that people never talk about. Whether we're responsible for creating that production design or there's a production designer, it's how that space is chosen or how it's designed to be photographed that has a huge impact in terms of what we consider cinematic. And when we watch a feature film, one of the most important things that makes a feature film so compelling is the fact that there is a production designer and they're making a cohesiveness in terms of the images that we're seeing. And of course, that has to do with their whole department in terms of costume design and props and, locations. And then of course, how it's lit and photographed. So many different things. And that's what makes this industry the best, because it's never boring and it combines more disciplines in the arts than any other field. Filmmaking combines more than anything that exists. It's practically every field having to do with arts and also craft. So it's pretty amazing. All right, I got off on the tangent there. There you go. All right, so we have not a lot of time before we start to get into sort of our general Q&A here. By the way, Eric, I'm having a Kulela, so that's a little sweet and smoky. So I think you would like that, kind of like me. I'm kind of sweet and smoky. I don't know about that. Okay, so
I would agree with that. Do you want to do a lightning round of cinema cameras and lenses?
Sure. You want to start? Caleb, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that form factor?
Well, we talked, on the phone how this might be a quiet year for cinema cameras because there seems to be kind of that 2-year cycle-ish. So we might not see too much there. Ben, any thoughts on that?
No, nothing that's I'm imminently expecting, other than perhaps new C300 this year.
I don't think so.
You don't think?
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. No. So I will say this. No, I have no NDAs right now. I have nothing that I've signed. There's nothing like that. It might be possible. In fact, interestingly enough, Canon released a new kit version of the C300 Mark II today, which includes the touchscreen from the C200 and the audio unit, which is the MA400, and they're selling it for the same price. So
that's right.
That's kind of new configuration for the C300 Mark II. I don't know. I mean, I would be pleasantly surprised if Canon came out with a successor to that camera system. My feeling would be maybe it would be later in the year if we saw it. Maybe I'm wrong. I think that we might see something from Arri, because I think at a certain point they are going to have to design a new sensor. And, a lot of people may not know this, but every single Arri Alexa-based camera out there, including the Amira, they all use the same sensor. I mean, an Arri 65 is just basically 3 of those same sensors next to each other. The LF is 2 of those sensors. So it's not like they designed a new sensor. They're just using that same color science, that same sensor technology, which I think is kind of brilliant. So maybe something from them on the high end. I would love for Fuji to come out with a digital cinema camera in the sort of EVA one. I'd love an upgrade to the EVA 1 as well. I know it's a little early.
Yeah.
But I think
they price dropped it today.
Oh, really?
Did it?
Go on.
They could beef up the construction of the camera body, though I haven't heard of any shattering or anything like that. But I think that they could make it a beefier body, and Caleb and I have talked that. But they could definitely please give us an actual screen that is better than a Coke bottle. Because that's the first thing you have to get with that camera. So those are the 2 cameras. I think we'll have to see. Do you think, guys, that we'll see anything from Blackmagic in a full frame kind of Ursa kind of thing?
Interesting. Take the Ursa, big Mama Ursa, and put
the mini. No, not the big, not the dumbbells Ursa. No.
Oh gosh, you can buy those for a song on eBay now. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've still got one under my desk here.
Nice.
Guillermo Montesinos wants to know what temperature my room is. It's at the perfect temperature to drink Scotch whiskey, is what the temperature is. I'm feeling just fine right now, so I'm good.
Love it. So pretty quiet year. Yeah, Fuji would be great. XH2 is probably this year, next year.
No, I think XH2, which would probably give us IBIS and also all of the stuff that we have in the XT3.
But again, that's kind of in that mirrorless. So yeah, I think that wraps up that. Do you want to talk about lenses? We were talking on the phone. I think this is the year of the Chinese optics. You look on the mirrorless E-mount stuff. It's amazing how much is coming out right now from China. Incredible. It used to be just a couple really trashy lenses from, I can't remember the brands, Midicon or something like that.
Yep.
And now there's so many coming out. If you watch like the rumor sites like Sony Rumors, Fuji, Canon Rumors, all those guys cover that stuff. And it's insane. And then on the cinema end, we've got those Nisis, the Zines. So China's starting to pump out some optics, and they're not as shabby as they used to be.
I think I got a backstep here to Loom's comment here. I would love to hear your opinion on external recorders and brands like Atomos and what they'll do when small DSLR and mirrorless cameras get into 10-bit internal recording territory. So I'm going to give you my take on this because I think this is a little segue. By the way, I totally agree with Caleb. I also think that we're going to see more lenses that are built for mirrorless that are designed for video application. Like the Fujifilm 18-55 kit lens is a great little lens, but you really have to use it as a variable prime. It was never designed for video. So when you are zooming while you are shooting, you're going to see basically, it almost looks like an aperture flutter, but it's really just that it wasn't designed for that purpose. But I think that, so we've got a couple of companies out there that are very different companies. We've got Atomos and we've got Small HD. And I think, we also have some very serious monitor companies out there. We've got Flanders Scientific. We have, of course, Sony and Canon in that space. And just like the lenses, like you're talking about, Caleb, I mean, the Chinese companies are just en fuego right now. It's just crazy what's happening with monitoring solutions. So I first want to address that question from Loom, which is, I think that that both of those companies, Atomos and Small HD, are going to have to diversify over time. I mean, Small HD could just stay in the monitoring business, but they clearly have to start moving into supporting what the cameras are now doing. And that's the biggest change that I'm hoping for in 2019. Right now, largely, most of our displays are 1080. Most of them are Rec 709 displays. A few of them are P3. They tend to not be very high in terms of dynamic range. We're getting it maybe 10 to 10 and a half stops of dynamic range. So none of these monitors that we're generally getting in the sort of affordable price range are giving us anything in terms of what these cameras are actually capturing at all. So for me, the biggest thing is there's a huge advantage to having a 4K display, even if it's small, because when you're looking at your image that's coming from a 4K camera system, you're getting a 1-to-1 pixel. So it's so much easier to focus when you're using a 4K display from a 4K camera system if the resolutions match. And we get false perception of focus when we push a 4K image to a 1080 display because it looks sharper just by default. And there's also the size. So I'm hoping that we get more bit depth. I hope that we get obviously greater color gamut, and that of course we get greater resolution out of these cameras overall for me. And then I think that Atomos is going to have to grow as a company. They're a smart bunch of people over there. I don't think that they don't see what's happening with the industry. They're producing some fantastic products. I think that the Ninja 5 is sort of, like a pinnacle product in certain ways, and they can obviously take that and push it into SDI and some other things, and they've done some really nice things, and I love that size. I know you're a huge fan, Caleb, but I would be surprised if they don't move into other spaces. Maybe they won't, but I don't think that they can survive long term as just a branded monitor recording company, whereas I think some companies like Small HD could potentially survive as a just monitor company, but we'll have to see where that goes. What do you think about that, Caleb?
I think you're right on. I think it's tricky. Small HD's got that killer monitor line, but in a way I feel Atomos is kind of going for the looking way ahead as to tackling the whole HDR thing. And they've got that recording aspect, which, you and I have talked about. What if they got weird and stapled a sensor onto one of those, and a lens mount?
They bongo tied that sucker on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that could be interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And if you research where Atomos came from and their CEO, it's kind of in there with Blackmagic, and there's some stuff there. So. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It could get pretty interesting. So I'm very interested to see what they do. They just, as some of you may know, they're now traded on the Australian Stock Exchange. And
yes,
yeah. Who knows?
How about you, Ben? How do you feel about this whole monitor recording space?
Same. Interesting to see where the recorders will go, but certainly Small HD. And that market's going to continue for monitoring and become more important if we do go to those higher and higher resolutions, just as you two have said. So yeah, not a huge amount more to add on that. So I think the other product group, just going off on a tangent slightly, that I was reading some articles about today, about medium format stills cameras and what's going to happen with their video capabilities. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, Jem, but I'm expecting something from the Panasonic, from the Pentax group this year. Whether that's branded as them or as Ricoh, we'll see. And whether they start to move more into the video capability. Obviously, the processing power that's needed to handle that is huge and hasn't really been tapped into properly yet. But that's really interesting to me to see where that goes.
Good. Well, here we are going into kind of the Q&A portion of this. The golden child is basically the guy who does this best. So I'm pushing it over to you to start at least. And he knows who he is.
You fool. Oh. Anyway,
I love you, man. All right, come on, let's do it. Let's go.
Speaking of love, everyone just start pounding the comments there with questions. As you do so, and we start addressing those, I want to say, would you please, just below this video, there's just a subscribe button, and if you haven't hit that button already, that would be phenomenal. We have 65 people watching, which is awesome, and we'd love to see all your wonderful faces next week and every week, which is when we do this every single Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. So please subscribe and
ring the bell. And ring the bell. You'll get notifications.
Ring that bell hard and tap the bell. And with that, let's jump into some questions, shall we? Shall we, Jem?
Yes.
Get them to laugh. Stay warm over there in the barn.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. Here we go. Good. If it's your first camera for YouTube, that's a comment or talking about XT3 from Alex. What's going on, Alex? Good to see you, dude.
Yeah.
People are talking about convergence. I would also love to see them do a comeback. And please read my last question. Mistakenly.
Oh, so he's asking about. So what you're going to have you're going to do a camera thing. You've got an episode coming up on cameras, Caleb.
That's tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that will hopefully help you with some of that stuff. I mean, the contenders right now, in my mind, are when you're talking about small format cameras, you're looking at GH5, GH5S. You're looking at the Fujifilm X-T3. If you're talking about cameras that, have good autofocus systems, and Panasonic has done a pretty big improvement on their autofocus system. If you want to go up a little bit in price range, then you can consider the A7 III as well. Those are kind of I'd say those are the three main categories of cameras right now. It doesn't mean that the EOS R doesn't contend, but I think that we're going to see some growth with those camera systems over time. So we'll have to see where it goes.
Great question for you, Jem, is from Alan. Lots of innovation in lighting this year. All the flexible, rollable LEDs, anything regarding 2019. I would say China. I think all these not great companies in the past are going to be at aperture level real quick. So Aperture is going to have to get some really bleeding edge stuff to stay ahead of that massive onslaught that we're seeing from China. What do you think?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing is, I think Aperture is going to give a lot of companies a lot of run for their money this year. It's not that they haven't been, but when they move into RGB and they move into other form factors, they are already respected in terms of their product line. And as long as they can keep their inventory in check, then I think that they're going to give some companies, not on the high end, but I think that it's going to be, I mean, I like what Light Panels is doing, but I think they're going to have a hard time. So I think we've got some a lot of competition there. And then Loom says, with more touchscreen options like touch and drag autofocus for video, are there monitors or recorders who implement these options? There hasn't been a developer communication device that allows you to take what is inside the camera and push it to external monitors yet. That would be really, really interesting.
If any does it, it's going to be Blackmagic.
Yeah,
because every one of their cameras has that open source SDK stuff that I'm not smart enough to fully understand. But
yeah, it's for geeks like we're not. So let's see what we've got here. What do you make? Oh, here, this one's for you, Ben. So what do you make of some of the rumors that the EOS R 4K is actually upsampled 2K? Do you have any feelings on that? Have you read anything about that?
I haven't seen. I saw a video and I briefly read the description and then ended up having to build some Lego or something over Christmas. So I haven't seen the basis of this, but I have read it. I don't know. Do you two know anything about it? It would seem unlikely, seeing as it seems to be based on the sensor from the 5D4.
Yep.
And that would have to be that camera as well, and that's been out long enough for someone to have uncovered that scandal by now, I'm sure.
I think I doubt it. I mean, my good buddy John Romer, who's contributed to News Shooter, and he's a guy who has a great blog and has a DP in his own right on the East Coast. He has an EOS R, and he said compared to his 1DX Mark II, he actually finds that the quality of video in 4K is better. So, and that's a pretty capable DSLR video camera. So I would probably say that's not true, but I don't know. It's the first time I'm ever hearing about it.
I think it's everyone spoiled by 6K sensors downscaling.
Yep.
That's all it is, I think.
Yep. Here we go. This one's for you, Caleb. Do you think the GH5, and we'll put the GH5S in there, is still a relevant camera to buy in 2019 when the new tech is coming?
I think so. I don't think this year is going to be terribly exciting unless Sony gets real fun in April, just because bigger sensors can't do what these little sensor cameras can. It's a lot of heat, that big fat full frame sensor. So I think the GH5 and 5S are going to comfortably, along with the X-T3, are going to comfortably sail through 2019 being solid cameras because of they're the rest of the spec sheet aside from the sensor size.
I just thought of something that we haven't talked about, which is I'm still shocked hasn't happened yet, which is DJI taking their prime lens set and their super 35 millimeter 15 stops of dynamic range camera that they have built a drone around. And we haven't heard a lot in that space, but when are they going to possibly come out with a camera around that whole ecosystem? Because there's no reason why they shouldn't. And then if they took some of the tech that they have in their gimbals and they built that into the camera in terms of tracking and things like that, it could be a pretty interesting, like a combination Movi Ronin, but really small around that technology that you just pick up and it has all of those features. I would love to see something like that. That would be pretty cool. I'd be down
that company is insane, man.
They have so much money. It's like stupid money.
Yeah, they just need a microphone and some lights, and they make everything, and it's all the best.
Hey, let's just buy Hasselblad while we're at it.
Yeah,
who gives a crap? I mean, why not? And then we can stick their logo onto our drone. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's definitely coming with that Osmo as being the new Osmo's the first step in that, and then all of that stuff from the higher end drones is going to come into that sort of handheld form factor as well, for sure. That's the first step. I was really excited by seeing that. Not that product, not the first one, but subsequent.
Yeah. 360 grad is a bad rolling shutter fixable with a firmware update. Might be improvable to a small degree, but a lot of it has to do with the readout. And so, like for instance, I'm very pleasantly surprised by the lack of rolling shutter in the X-T3. So they must have a pretty fast readout on that camera. Compare that to the to the A6500, and it's like I got that camera and I took it out of the box and I put it into 4K, and I picked it up and I turned it on and I went like this and I went like this and I packed it back up in the box and I set it back. I literally bought the camera. I had bought the camera. It's crazy.
It's like being drunk and holding a fishbowl in front of your head as you walk around the world. Incredibly bad.
That should be the camera and flask camera right there. That should be at the end of the episode. So I'm going to call it, gentlemen. It is 4 o'clock, and pitter patter and everything else. It's really fantastic to have this community of people, and and coming in numbers now. Let's increase this. Please tell people about it. You can check out Caleb's channel at DSLR Video Shooter on YouTube. Ben, we can go to benbarden.co.uk, and one of these days, it's a running joke, he will have his YouTube channel up and running. and you can check out this channel and some of the content that's there. Gentlemen, what's the send-off for this week? And of course, we'll be back next week. What do we got?
Here we are, 2019. Ben gets his channel when I stop drinking 4 roses, and we'll be off to the races. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
That has to be our pledge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
there
Ben,
you go.
any parting words? Rum, sugar daddy?
Just great to see everyone again. Wishing you all a very happy new year and look forward to getting on it again this time next week.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Let's just have
Cheers.
one more for our
There you go.
guests. And we'll see you guys next week at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday.
Ta-ta.
Cheers.